Welcome to the #InvestThis podcast, where the secrets for real estate investing are revealed. Now, here's your host, Scott Bauer.
And welcome everybody to the 45th episode of the #InvestThis podcast. I am your host, Scott Bauer. And today, I'm very blessed to have Scott Carson with us. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's a tale of two Scotts this morning, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Scott has been an active real estate investor since 2002, and for the last decade has focused on the niche of note investing, primarily in the area of non-performing notes. So far, he's purchased over $500 million in distressed assets and made a name for himself in the industry. He also hosts a very popular podcast, the Note Closer Show podcast. So make sure you get over and listen to that. With that being said, Scott, why don't you go ahead and give the listeners a little bit more about your background and kind of what you're focused on now?
Yeah, so I was like many real estate entrepreneurs. I went to some workshops back in 2002, watched HGTV, me and the ex-wife at the time, or wife at the time, ex-wife now. Got into real estate investing, thought we'd be the next, the landlords, here in Austin, Texas. Bought a couple investment properties. I was making good money out of college as a financial advisor. And we bought 2 investment properties, and then the market went south. We have a little company here called Dell Computers, rhymes with hell for a reason. They laid off a bunch of their employees as they're moving stuff around. Our tenants obviously weren't paying. We're deadbeat. I got laid off because my company closed their offices here. So we went from being landlords to being deadbeat borrowers relatively quickly. Okay.
Isn't it crazy how fast that can happen?
It can happen. The only people that made money on those deals was the realtor. All right. Buying and selling it for us.
Right.
So fast forward a couple of years, I worked some different odd jobs, did whatever I could to get my assets out of a sling, got back into banking and finance, and was doing great doing that here in Austin, Texas for a big company, JP Morgan Chase. I had one of my buddies start a mortgage company up with a couple real estate entrepreneurs that were teaching owner financing, creative finance, and wraparound mortgages, fix and flips and stuff like that. And came to me because he needed help. And I saw the opportunity to try to give my real estate entrepreneur dreams a second chance. And I remember it by the day. I put my 2 weeks notice in basically July 5th, 2004. And for the next 4 years, I was doing mortgages for investors, traveling the country, all these seminars. I was really blessed that the people that I was working with really were mentoring me. So I got to take home manuals and training things every weekend, and really started implementing that in my own real estate business and in the fix and flip and wholesaling and options aspect of the business here in Austin, Texas. And, Austin is a great city. You and I were just talking about that a few minutes ago before we got started, Scott. But in the last few years, it is just crazy appreciation. It's not a lot of great real estate deals if you're an entrepreneur in real estate who's looking for something that makes sense. You can buy real estate here. Doesn't mean it's a good investment. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so everything was going well. 2008, the music stopped in the mortgage market with all the meltdowns and things like that. So I gave my part of the mortgage company to my buddy and then started just focusing on fix and flipping, short sales, and a little bit of note investing here in Austin. But that went on for about 2 years. 2010, I said, let me just stop doing everything else. I sold everything that I owned except my dog and my truck. Had gotten divorced and was just focused on the note game of calling banks and asset managers. It was literally like a scene out of The Pursuit of Happiness, just down for dollars, 4 days a week. Really built a name for myself with these banks and asset managers because I was getting in stuff and buying stuff. And like I said, from 2010 to 2013, it was just me and the dog literally driving across the country, going into banks, talking with asset managers, speaking at real estate investment clubs, and my business just ballooned overnight. It was just crazy how much I was walking into banks after banks in Florida, and they'd have just files all the way to the ceiling that we could cherry pick from. It was just absolutely, pennies on the dollar at the time as well. And so bought a lot of assets. We've closed on over $500 million in the last decade. Actually, it's over $1 billion now, but people like, the $500 million is a little easier number to swallow for most people. But started teaching people how to do it in 2010 with workshops and built a name for myself. And now they call me the note guy across the country. But yeah, that's what we've built a name, company called We Close Notes. You can check it out online, but that's all we focus on is buying assets, mortgages on residential commercial properties where the borrower is not paying for some sort of reason. Our goal is then to, once we buy that note, try to work out with the borrower, try to keep them in the property if we can, or if not, work on some exit or liquidation strategy to take the property back and then sell it.
Definitely. So a lot of questions. I mean, let's just start at the very beginning. I mean, you go through the whole cycle, you go up to '08, the market falls out from underneath you. You're just like a lot of people. You're sitting there with bag open, like, wow, what am I going to do now? And, got you to where you kind of pushed the reset button, it sounds like, in 2010. You decided that, it was your dog and your truck, which you're in Texas, so that only makes sense.
Well, if you read The Millionaire Next Door, it was a 6-year-old white Ford F-150 down to the exact.
That's hilarious. But anyway, so you get in there and you start building these relationships with banks. But my question is, in this time of turmoil where nobody had any money, you're going to these banks, you're finding these distressed assets. How are you funding them? Where are we getting the capital to do that?
That's a really great question, Scott. So I didn't have the capital myself. I had a couple higher end properties that I bought that I had to write big checks at the closing table. And that's not the way you should do it as an investor.
Nope.
You should be getting a check, not writing a check. So I leveraged social media. I leveraged LinkedIn. I leveraged Facebook. I leveraged videos talking about specific deals. And I would just share that out to my audience, and then they would share it out there. So I found people that had money. I found investors that had made money during the RTC days of the 80s, which was a whole basically, pre-2008, 9 and 10. And they came to me. I was, first of all, when I didn't have a lot of capital, I was wholesaling assets to other investors that knew what they were doing. So I'd make $1,500 or $3,000 or $35,000 on a 6-unit apartment complex I wholesaled in San Diego. I made $100,000 on a 16-unit in LA back in the day. And that gives you a little bit of cushion when you've got some nice checks there, right, that you just keep hustling. So I built up my own stuff. And then as people started seeing what I was doing, and there started people coming to me, hey, I got money sitting in an IRA making zero. Boom. Can I put that with you? Can I partner with you? Can I learn what you're doing and earn while I learn,
Yep. And so really that gives you a lot of good leads. Not only are you helping somebody else to achieve what they wanted to do, but they're in turn bringing you what you need to achieve as well. Because you're, taking a cut or taking a piece of what they're doing as well.
Exactly.
It really makes a lot of sense. So, you got in, it's such a niche thing to do. And a lot of people do not understand, why would you want to buy a note that's not performing? They're not paying. Why would you want to do that? So why don't you walk us and the listeners down that path? How do you make money? Or how do you go negotiate with these borrowers that are not paying? And do you charge interest on that? Do you get interest on the note that you're buying? Or explain that a little bit for the listeners out there.
So these are all great questions, very common questions we get. So you have to realize I'm buying the mortgage on an asset, on a house or a commercial building, a commercial property. That borrower usually owes more than what the property is worth. So let's just use basic numbers. Say they owe $120,000 on a $100,000 house. Okay. And the fact that they haven't paid on that mortgage for 3 months or 6 months or a year or 2 years depreciates the value of that receivable. So I can buy that debt and for a fraction of what's owed, whether it's 30, 40, or let's just say 50 cents of value right now.
Okay.
So $100,000 house, guy owes 120 on it. I buy it for $50,000. Okay. I usually buy below 50%, but we'll just use the numbers because it's easy. So a normal mortgage payment on a $120,000 mortgage would be roughly around $800 a month, right?
Right.
Say that. So the fact, if I can then reach out to the homeowners and say, okay, I'm now the bank. Thank you for not paying ABC, but you've got to now pay to stay. Pay, stay. They still owe 120, okay? And I don't care what their country western song is. I'm like, listen, I'm giving you an opportunity here. Let's figure this out, because it's going to depend on pricing. In states where it's a longer foreclosure time frame, like Florida or God's waiting room, like I like to call it, where it can take a year to foreclose. Okay, it takes a year to foreclose. But here in Texas or Georgia or Missouri, where it's like 90 days or less, that works in my favor. So I'll pay a little bit more for those. But
Phoenix.
Yeah, Phoenix, exactly. Phoenix is fast. Man, I was buying a lot down in Phoenix back in 2010. Anyway, so their monthly mortgage payments say $800 a month. Well, if I come to them and say, listen, Mr. Borrower, you're over a year behind. if you can start making your $800 a month payment to me, I don't care if you're out of work. If you can start making that payment, we'll worry about what you're behind on later on. So $800 a month times 12 is $9,600, right? $9,600 divided by a $50,000 investment is almost a 20% return right there, right?
Boom. Yeah, right.
Now, if I can get them to pay a couple $100 extra a month to whittle off the rearages, or I can have them bring $2,000 or $5,000 to the table, you see how my return, my ROI goes up substantially. Okay.
Substantially, right.
And that's my goal. I want to get them to start paying because then it's cash flow. Then I'm not paying attorney fees to foreclose. I don't have to pay fix-up fees to go and get the property rent ready or to sell it on the MLS. It's a reperforming asset after they make 6 to 12 months of payments. And then at that point, a year later, they've been paying on time. I can sell that note now for 80, 85% of value.
Because now it's a performing note.
Say what?
Now it's a performing note at that point, right?
That's correct, Scott. So if you go through the numbers, $9,600 in payments. Let's say I got them to put $2,000 down just to reinstate, which is what I usually like to ask for as a minimum. So that's 11,600. Now I bought it at 50. I'm selling it at 85,000. That's another 35,000 plus the 11,000. That's $46,000 in profit on a $50,000 investment.
Yeah, that's a very, very, very good return. My next question is, how often, I mean, if these people were behind to begin with, right, and they're not making their payments, and you step up to the plate, you say, hey, new owner, but you need to start paying me. How often do they just say, go pound sand, man? I wasn't paying before. I'm not going to pay you.
That's a really great question too, Scott. And for most percentages, you buy 10 notes, 10 distressed mortgages, about half of them are going to get reinstated, provided that they're working, they're living in the house. If somebody's already moved out of the house, you're not going to get reperforming. You're going to work on a deed in lieu or cash for keys or a foreclosure at that point. But there's basically three strategies. Either get it reperforming one sort of fashion, either they reinstate it, or they start up again, or you modify the loan with like a trial payment plan, things like that. The second thing is like cash for keys, deed in lieu. Hey, we'll give you money to walk away. If you can't make payments, I'll give you a couple $1,000 to walk away, or they'll just sign the property over because we won't come after them. And then of course, foreclosure happens a good chunk of the time, 40 to 50%. We're pretty blessed on what we do because we do such an extensive due diligence check on the front end. We're checking taxes, if those are paid up to date, if they've made a payment of any sort in the last 12 months, is power utilities on, because an occupied asset has a lot more exit strategies for reinstatement versus vacant. So we run about a 64% reinstatement rate on the assets we buy. And then the other 35% is a mixture of foreclosure and cash for keys.
So, and then once, let's say they get out of the house, whatever, they decide to not make payments, or you do a cash for keys, you give them a couple $1,000, they get out of the house. Now all of a sudden you have an asset that you either turn around, fix and flip, you wholesale it, you do, or you turn around if it's in good shape, put it on the retail market. Is this the case?
That's exactly right. So usually if it needs we have paint and carpet, just about everything, but a lot of times we'll sell it as is. We'll be able to move it. Or if we do have to take it to foreclosure, we'll sell it at a foreclosure auction, not to do any work on it and just get a check.
Right.
Some people, we have some of our students that are taking properties back and then owner financing them or turn them into rentals to add to their portfolio. I don't like toilets, tenants, and trash out. So I like to double down. So if I take an asset back to foreclosure, I want to sell it as fast as possible. So I'll list it at 85, 90 cents on the dollar to get multiple bids to bid it up. So I'm not giving in concessions a lot.
Yep.
And then take that money back and then look to double down. Okay, so I bought one, let's buy 2 or 3 now. All right.
Yep.
And those 3 turn into 6 or 9, and then just kind of, cascade it down from there.
So I'm sure that a lot of the listeners out there, myself included, what is it, and how do you get into this market? How do you get into it? Where do you go to find these notes, or do you have to you have to be cash heavy in order to buy these notes at the very beginning? Do you have to build relationships with the bank? Obviously, all this stuff takes time and takes resourcefulness. So explain that a little bit.
Well, you've got to be a super grand wizard with a Masonic lodge to get in. I'm joking. Used to be back years ago, a decade ago, prior to 2008, you needed really to have a good chunk of change, roughly $5 million to get in the game. Otherwise, banks wouldn't really talk to you. And then when everything happened with the meltdown, in 2010, we had a peak of 15 million homeowners underwater.
Wow.
15 million underwater that were in default or owed more on their houses. So it's still average of 1 out of 10 Americans are upside down or behind on their mortgage right now. Okay. So it hasn't gone away. So the beautiful thing is all the bigger buyers of debt got scared and walked away. So it left for this huge void or vacuum for investors like me to come in and start reaching out to banks and hedge funds because they didn't have their normal, exit strategies to bigger funds. So they went from requiring you to have like 5 million to buy anything, buy something from us. I've had,
get it off our books.
Yeah, get it off the books. Capital One sends me a spreadsheet. I'm sorry, a PDF. It's 33-page a PDF in 6-point font, full of notes on everything in their commercial sub-$1 million loan amount across the country. And they're like, just buy anything. All right, buy anything. And so that's the thing is it's different. You're not going to go down to your local bank and talk to the vice president. If anybody gets anything out of it, most of the notes are handled by an internal department in these banks and lending institutions called the secondary marketing department.
Yep.
Okay. Or they're also known as the special asset department. Okay. Those individuals are the ones that look at the portfolio, look at what's going on in the market, and they're the ones looking to sell the bad debt off of their books. And so it's just a matter of reaching out to them. Their internal departments. A lot of times you got to call the main switchboard at the corporate offices and get transferred there. Although you can jump on like LinkedIn and type in special asset managers and it'll pull up a list like 500,000 people that have that in their portfolio, because there's a lot of lending institutions out there that aren't banks that have this stuff on their books too.
Right.
So that's one of the easiest way. Go to LinkedIn. You can jump on like another website like the Lane Guide. You can go to the FDIC.gov website, pull up the quarterly reports. It's from a bank to tell you what kind of stuff they have in bad accrual loans or bad loans. And then just start dialing for dollars for the most part, or doing an email blast out is what I do on a regular basis. And then it's just the beautiful thing is banks aren't looking for proof of funds for the most part. They're not requiring earnest money. They'll send you a list. Like I got a list coming in here in about an hour. I'll have 500 different assets from across the country that I can cherry pick from. When I'm buying 1 or 50 of them, if I buy in bulk, I get a bigger discount, but I'll have 30 days of due diligence or longer once we get the list in and get bids accepted. So that gives me the opportunity to go out and raise private capital, because that's where we fund most of these deals is with other people's money. And most of it comes from like people's self-directed IRA accounts, their cash accounts, their solo 401ks. I mean, there's $7 trillion in money sitting on the sidelines, not making anything. I'll give you an example. We do a lot with Quest IRA out of Houston. And they have $1.3 billion under management, and 34% of that is sitting in 0% earning accounts.
Wow.
So that's what we do a lot with marketing out to our databases, out to LinkedIn, out to social media, talking about the deals that we've closed, the deals that we're working on. And then I speak a lot on the subject, obviously, every month I'm speaking somewhere, and that helps us raise a lot of capital for our deals as well.
Definitely. So let's go to the dark side of this for a second. Where does things go bad? How do you get screwed? How do you lose all your money? How do you, how do you lose out of this game?
That's such a great question. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I do see people coming into the note game that have no experience. They don't understand it. It's a different game than real estate. Okay. Because I'm a bank, basically. I act as a bank. I have all the same rights. When I buy a note, I step directly in the bank's shoes. So I have things that I have to do and things that I can't do, because I'm, fair debt collection practices and servicing laws and things like that. So where people lose money is they don't check taxes and they get wiped out in a tax sale. B, they take somebody's opinion like a BPO, an online valuation, and trust that as the value versus actually putting eyes on the property. You always got to have a realtor or somebody drive by, take photos, make sure it's still there, make sure it's not a slab or, it's got a lean on it versus being upright. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's the big thing, not checking taxes, not getting a proper value with realtors, not going off of Zillow or Truly. I mean, you can do that on the front end to get a rough idea, but always before you close, make sure your value.
Trust but verify.
Yeah, exactly. And then the third thing, besides taxes and value, is title. We are buying notes that have clouded titles because there's liens and other things on it. So what I mean by title is checking to see what's behind your first lien. And that's a big thing. I only buy first liens. I don't go buy junior liens, second liens, or third liens. There are some people that buy that, and that's fine. It's just not my cup of tea.
Right.
Okay? I want to control the property by being in the first lien position, so that the only thing that can really wipe me out is taxes if I don't pay, and I'm always checking that. but checking the paperwork, making sure that the mortgage is enforceable, making sure that all the assignments of mortgages, all the allonges that transfer ownership from one seller to another, making sure those are in the file. Checking the servicing records. You can see what the borrower has said. If they've told the previous bank to go pound sand, or they've tried to do a loan mod for 3 years. So those are the things to check onto it. And then taking action. Don't sit around. If you buy a note and your servicer is sending letters out and the borrower tells you to pound sand, don't just sit on it. I know one fund out of California, San Francisco, they're big in the REO phase. They dropped $5 million on a portfolio of first liens they bought at a great price, and they didn't touch the files for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So they finally get around to messing around with it. Well, 70% of it's trashed, or it's gone to tax foreclosure. The files have never been filed or checked properly, so those are in disarray. So they literally basically wrote a $5 million cashier's check and then with a match to it.
Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, I think that it is a whole nother game. I mean, it's not your typical real estate transaction, although real estate is the vessel. This is a whole different niche that, and let me ask you flat out, how profitable is it? Is it, you got to hold these things for at least a year?
No. I mean, I like holding it because I get cash flow. So that's why I have it. My goal is to have, 400 performing notes that are sending me in $500 a month.
Right. That's good.
That's the goal. But we have a lot of people that are buying 10 or 20 assets in a year, and they're making six figures because some of them get worked out relatively quickly. Every note is its own kind of country western song. You don't know which way it's going to go. It's like a choose your own adventure book. Okay. The borrowers are really easy to work with, and they're so thankful. And they, with one letter, one phone call, they're paying on time again because they take the opportunity.
Yeah.
Others, they just try to stretch things out. So it's important to know, like, if you're buying in a state, what that foreclosure time frame is. If it's a year or 2 years or 3 years or 2 months, that's important. Knowing the days on market. So when you do take the property back, you don't want to buy rural areas. You want to kind of stay in either the primary or secondary markets. So you've got plenty of, realtors, plenty of vendors, plenty of people to buy that house if you need to. And so that's the biggest thing is, and what's really great too, Scott, is this is a vendor-driven business. I'm not the guy making phone calls. I'm not the guy knocking on the doors. I compare myself to being like my own general manager of a franchise, you could say. Or I would say Jerry Jones of the Dallas Cowboys, but they got beat last night by the Titans, so I can't really say that too much. But
they got crushed.
They got crushed is a good way to put it. I'm sad. But you don't see Jerry Jones selling hot dogs in the stands. You don't see Jerry Jones out there trying to protect Dak. All right. What he's doing is he's putting people in charge. And so that's what we do. I put my servicing company in charge. They're the ones that are doing most of the borrower reach out. And then when we buy assets, I get my attorneys involved very quickly to send door knockers out. Or if the borrower responds, hey, let's come to a solution in 30 days so that we can either start the foreclosure process or get you paying back on time and take that nightmare that you fell into, whether it's getting laid off or going through a divorce or going sick, kind of putting that to bed and helping you reestablish the dream of home ownership.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, do what you're good at, outsource the rest. I've always been a very big proponent of that because you can't do everything. And of course, it sounds like buying notes is a team sport. You need to have different members of the team doing their part to make sure you get to the goal line, right?
That's correct.
Now, what is the biggest obstacle you've faced up to now?
So biggest obstacle is depending on where you're at. And this is something everybody goes through as entrepreneurs, is we get so used to doing a lot of things ourselves, being the jack of all trades, in fix and flipping or wholesaling or marketing. And as you start growing your note business, like anything else, you have to delegate things out. So a lot of people will hit that solopreneur ceiling of like at 20 deals. They can still manage everything. There's paperwork. You got to learn to hire somebody. Hiring your assistant, a good first assistant, will make you six figures because they're going to do the things that you don't want to be doing, the paperwork or the phone calls or the running to the bank or running to get the mail or your dry clean, whatever. Most entrepreneurs, including real estate professionals, don't value their hour wisely. They're doing minimum wage jobs when they should be making $100, $250 an hour. Okay.
Yep.
And so that's one of the hardest things. People don't value their time right off the bat. They're doing little things that they shouldn't be doing. The other thing is if they hit a wall, what's so great about the note industry is it's such a very friendly, small community. Hey, I need a realtor in Alabama who reach out to somebody. I need an attorney to help me foreclose, or who's a servicer I should be using, or, I've got some deals, who's looking for funding, or who's looking to fund a deal, or who's putting some money to work, or vice versa. So it's a small niche, probably around less than 5,000 true distressed note investors. I'm talking individuals, not like funds,
right,
out there. But it's we share. There's so many deals that we see 6 to 12 months before the traditional investor does. That I don't get worried about competition. I know there's plenty of deals to go around. And then I have that mentality of, if I can make other people successful, it's going to make me successful as the cream rise to the top. I have a very big servant leadership aspect of what I do to teaching people, because it's a different animal. You're not going to see an HGTV Flip This House TV show. All right. But the beautiful thing is there is a lot of education online. You got to get trained, because there's a lot of little things that can trip you up if you don't know what you're doing.
That abundance mentality really makes all the difference in the world. There is plenty to go around, and especially in this distressed note buying business, nobody understands that. I mean, most people don't understand that, right? So, I wouldn't be worried about competition. Now, what is the biggest deal you've done? You mentioned you made $100,000 on one deal in California. I mean, what should a person expect out of an average deal, and maybe what's the biggest deal you've done?
So we buy a lot of mini bulks. Where our normal trading amount's about $250,000. Okay. So we buy a lot of, it might be 10 assets here and there, 6 assets here. For the last 4 years, we've averaged on an annual basis of at least closing on an average of at least one deal per day. Okay. We did 500 2 years ago, 435 last year. We'll be right around 400 when we wrap up the year this year. But the thing is, biggest deal we did, 225 notes in one pool. That was a nice chunk of change. I'm working on a deal right now, 227 notes that we're looking to back end with an investor. We got guys that come in, they'll probably pay us somewhere, 3 to 5 points on it just for forwarding the deal to them. Okay. Or we're not taking it down ourselves. But a lot of investors get started, I always say, look, if you're going to buy an asset, buy something that's around $50,000. You can usually pick it up for like 25. That may be like a doghouse in Phoenix or LA. But it's a nice house in Ohio, a really great house in Michigan or Indiana. So that's where we see most of the deals is and I'm a football fan. So the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, the ACC part of the country is basically from the Mississippi East is where we see most of the assets. And those are what makes the most amount of sense. So, 25, 50 grand on a deal that you maybe take back and foreclose on a start side, or $300 to $400 a month in cash flow. It's not I'll tell you this, it is not a get rich quick overnight type of investing for the most part.
Most stuff isn't, it really isn't. And, the people out there that say that there is a get rich quick are lying. They're lying to you. And that's what it always is every single time. My next question was, what type of time should somebody try to commit to if they want to be a note buyer? Obviously it's a full-time job, right? It can be
a very full-time thing if you want to do that. But we have a lot of investors that are doing this from their 7 to 2. It's their side hustle. They work a normal job, and then it's from 7 p.m. to like 2 a.m. or on the weekends, or like 10 to 20 hours a week in the part-time. They're getting their feet wet. And one of the things that I really love the fact is, like, we love to give people kind of a game plan for success. How do you get from 0 to 6 figures in your first 12 months? And that just takes time of making offers. You got to know that, if you make 10 offers, you're probably going to get 1 accepted right out the board. So you keep those numbers in mind. If you need to do 30 deals in your first year, it means you got to make 300 offers. That means you've got to make 25 offers a month, or roughly 6 offers a week to get to where you want to go. So it's all about knowing your KPIs and building a game plan to get to it. I would not recommend somebody who's that needs cash right now to try to do this, because there's a bit of a buildup. It may be 60 days before you buy your first asset, from getting everything set in place and marketing asset managers and getting stuff closed. So you have to keep that in mind. Now, wholesalers, you can wholesale notes like you can a traditional piece of property, which is nice. But if you're wholesaling, I think you're making the least amount of money on a transaction. Most of the time, if you had the investors coming in that would have bought that as a wholesale deal, they often will partner or joint venture with you where you can make a sizable amount of capital.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? I think that's across the board. Fix and flipping, you're probably going to make more per deal than if you just wholesale it. And it comes down to the time, right? The more time you put into something, the longer it takes to get something done. Ideally, the more profitable it should be, because otherwise, why would anybody put that time in?
Mm-hmm.
But, Scott, I think we could probably talk for the entire day today about buying notes, the strategies, the way to get into it, problems you've had, etc. But, I really appreciate you sharing so far your timeline and how you got to this point. And now you're buying these niche, or you're in this niche opportunity that is being profitable for you. And I'm sure that the listeners are very eager to learn more about it. But I think this is a really good segue into our lightning round. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Bring it on, baby.
All right. What is your hashtag invest this tip to keep our listeners moving forward?
Oh, that's such a great thing. Take action.
Boom.
Here's the biggest thing I can tell you. Quit going to workshop after workshop. Quit getting on webinar after webinar. It does you no good if you never take action. So figure something out, whether it's fix and flipping or wholesaling or options or note investing, whatever that may be. Focus on something and focus your time on that. And you'll be 5 times more successful than trying to be a jack of all trades and doing things. Don't water down your message. You've heard that 80% of your profits come from 20% of your activities. Will make you turn your 20% of activities into 100% of your activities, and you'll make 5 times the amount of money.
That's huge, man. Appreciate you sharing that. It's a good tip. What do you have a favorite book you've ever read that's had a massive impact on your life and business?
Oh my gosh. We've all read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Everybody. Yep. My favorite book.
There's a book that Napoleon wrote in 1938 that did not get published. It's called Outwitting the Devil.
Yep.
All right. It is one of the best books that I've ever read. I read it once a year at least. Sometimes I give away 100 copies a year to different people on it. It's a phenomenal book. The reason it didn't get published in 38 is Mrs. Hill was too worried about the fact that in the book, Napoleon is having a conversation with the devil about why the devil is so successful at getting people to not find success. And he says in the book, well, those that are focused are the ones that have the most amount of impact in society. Those are the ones that I'm trying my best to get them to drift, to get them to chase the squirrels, to go after shiny object syndromes. Those that can avoid drifting are the ones going to find the most amount of success and have the most positive impact in this world. So it's what was great is a few years back, Don Green, the CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, found the manuscript, gave it to Sharon Lechter, who is the co-author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and is a good friend of mine as well. And literally, she rewrote the book, left it pretty much the same, but added segments in each chapter of what she thought or how she thought Napoleon would approach the subject and the conversation in today. And so it's Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Phenomenal book. It will be a game changer to anybody that's read it.
Thank you for sharing that. That's actually one of the books I have not read. I know about it. It's in my Amazon, just click to buy. I just haven't bought it. So now's my time to go buy it. Thanks for sharing that.
Great book, man. You will not be disappointed, buddy. Quit drifting. Go buy
it. Who has given you some really good advice? Of course, I'm sure you mentioned about being mentored and coached. What's the best advice you've ever been given? And what has that impact been?
Man, my buddy Greg Reed, who many people know who the Think and Grow Rich 3 Feet from Gold. He's a co-author of that one. I'm very fortunate to call Greg a mentor and a buddy of mine. Greg gave me some great advice years ago, because I think as entrepreneurs, especially when we start marketing and we get out there, we leave our jobs and start doing our side hustle more so, we get so concerned about others' opinions of us.
Yep.
And Greg told me just to worry about the 33 rule. And if you look at your tribe, your circle of influence, 33% or a third of your audience is going to love you because they know who you are. They love you. They're there to support you, love on you, help you, support whatever you need. Okay. There's 33% of your group, though, that are just ugly people. They hate you. They're not going to like you no matter what you do, who you are. They don't care what your sex, your race, color, whatever, ethnicity. They don't care. They just have a dark soul in their heart. Okay. Oftentimes, though, when it's us as marketers or entrepreneurs, we don't worry about what the 33% that's good size. We worry about that 1 or 2 person in the dark side that says something bad about us.
Yep.
Best advice Greg ever told me says, quit worrying about the 33% that hate you. They're not going to pay your bills, so F them. Worry about the 33% that love you, and then that middle chunk that's on the fence that doesn't know you. Go out and wow them, and eventually that's 66, 67% of the audience out there. Eventually you keep doing a good thing, being who you are, not somebody else. eventually that 33% of the outliers will start coming over to the good side and be like, oh, I knew Scott, or I knew Steve back when he was just getting going. He'd be like, yeah, whatever, asshole.
Hey man, no, that's huge. I think it's really important for everybody to think about that, because it's human nature, I think, to, you know, really be focused on people that don't agree with your opinion or don't agree with what you're trying to say. So that's huge. Thank you for sharing that. We're blessed, very blessed, right? How do you like to give back?
Man, we've done it in a couple ways. First and foremost, we are big fans of our past and present military and first responders. So we have workshops that we teach all the time. We comp our military into those. Any first responders as well, we complement.
Yep.
Second thing, with it being the holidays, we're big about kids. All right, so we give a lot. We do a lot of dollar matching, dollar for dollar, to like Toys for Tots or other charities for that too. We've donated, $500,000 the last few years to a very special program out in San Diego that helps do volunteer surgeries for kids that have facial deformities or, you know, birthmarks or things like that. And then we're also very active with Make-A-Wish Foundation as well too. So,
and that's huge. Those are two major things that are very impactful, not only in the military, but also kids and our youth that are growing up to, you know, give them the right direction. So thank you for that. Where can the listeners find you? I guarantee you that they're wondering about how do I get into buying notes, or they just want to know more about you. Where can they find you?
Really easy. If they go to weclosenotes.com, and they can go there, and we've got all sorts of information. If they want to, if they pull out their phone that they're listening to this on or watching this on, and text the word notes, NOTES, to the phone number 72000, and send it. It'll send them back a text message to opt in, and they'll get free over 80 hours of free video. Not trying to sell them anything. It's free hours, 80 plus hours of different webinars and coaching calls that we do for people every Monday night on the note business. We tackle a different topic, and it's my gift to them to help them kind of get their feet wet and learn some of the ins and outs of note investing.
Man, Scott, thank you so much for being here today, man. You've given so much value to all the listeners, myself included. You know, this niche is something that, you know, I would even look into on a part-time basis, right? Because it's another tool in the tool belt to go out and do more deals and ultimately, you know, be successful. So thank you for sharing that. Thanks again for being here, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Man, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
All right. Talk to you soon. Thanks you. Bye-bye.
Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast to help us spread the word. Go ahead and reach out to Scott Bauer on all the social media outlets for suggestions on topics and guests for the show. And check out investthispodcast.com for more secrets and resources to achieve real success in real estate.